Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Gurureva Param Brahma, Asmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Yapyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Asmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Shapita Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Vidya Dravidam Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Yata sarvani bhutani pratibhanti stithani cha yatraivo pashamam yanti tasmai satyatmane namaha. So we are still in our story of Leela. Puneet, will you chant tonight so everybody in the room can hear well?
Sure.
And could someone tell us what verse we're on, what page we're on? Mark?
I believe it's 70 on page 43.
Yes, that's what I have.
Verse 70 on page 43?
Yes.
Yes.
So will you help us out, please, Puneet?
Sure. Kam tvam keyam putashreyam tasmai lila bravit vachaha mahila tava lilaham praknati saha dharmani. Who are you? Who is this? Where from is she? Leela told him these words. I am Leela, the woman who was your wife earlier.
So remember the story. We've got Leela 1.0, Leela 2.0, Arundhati, and a Leela 3.0. We've got Padma 1.0, who got old and died. We've got Padma 2.0, who's young and a virile king. And we have Vasishta, the Brahmin who said, gee, I'd like to be a king. Trying to get all these characters. So does the Matrix have all these different kinds of people within people? Something like that. Anyway, so the body of Leela 1.0, she's gone. She left the body, it was gone too long, it went back to the elements. So now the king 2.0 is wondering who this Leela is, who's showing up in a subtle body with the goddess. And Leela says, ah, I was formerly your wife. Going on.
Yam te mahila lila vidya lila yamaya uparjita tavaivarte pratibimba mai shubha. This Leela, your second woman, was acquired by me only for your sake. The beautiful lady is of the nature of a reflected image.
Yes. So this Leela next to you, the 3.0, she is like a pratibimba. Pratibimba is a reflection in a mirror. Very important image used in the scripture. So Vinayak is a handsome young man, a fat old one. He goes into the bathroom and looks in the mirror. The mirror appears as a handsome young man. I go into the bathroom. I don't have to remove the Vinayak. Oh, old man looking at himself in the mirror. No, the Vinayak in the mirror and the Jim in the mirror is nothing but the mirror appearing as name and form. Now, an aside, there's a wonderful suggestion about practice here. No, I'm not going to do that now. Change my mind. We'll stay with the story. So, consciousness, one without a second, the eternal substrat. But it has its inherent Maya Shakti. No one knows why. But it has within it the complete freedom of will to have all these names and forms appear in it. No limitation to it. And so all of these bodies are in fact Pratibimba. Not just this one. Not just Leela 3.0, that's not just a hologram. And Leela 2.0 is real. All of them are like reflections. Now, he's purposely messing with our whole notions of time and space, going back to our conversation beforehand. Universes within universes within universes. So sometimes if it's Sunday morning and you are sleeping in, do you ever have a dream and wake up? And then you go back to sleep and you have another dream and then you wake up. Have you ever done that? Have several dreams in the morning? Yes? No?
Yes.
So are you in one dream out sailing on a boat, and in another dream trekking up a mountain, and on a third dream driving a car? How did you manage to get into all of those dreams? You are not in the dreams. The dreams are in you. And this waking state reality is like a very long and very vivid dream. It too is Pratibimba. Now, this may be difficult to accept. This is an advanced text. If you do nothing more than doubt the solidity of the waking state, that's good enough. Now, this philosophical notion that the waking state world is like.
You said doubt. If you
Doubt,
do nothing more,
yes.
nothing more than just doubt. Okay,
If
like
you,
skepticism. Is what you're saying.
yes, be skeptical
Okay.
about the world. But this is not a philosophical notion just pulled out of thin air. It is rooted in direct experience. The great saints and sages have entered into samadhi. And as the mind thins, technical term, tanu manas, thinness of mind, the world starts to get very ephemeral. Go there and prove it to yourself. Keep thinning the mind. All right, going on.
Yesham Saraswati Deva Trailokya Janani Shubha Ityakarna Samuthaya Vavande Sa Saraswati. This is the goddess Saraswati, the auspicious mother of the three worlds. Thus, having heard and having got up, he saluted Saraswati.
So he gets up and pranams to her as well. Sees the goddess and Leela 2.0. Going on.
Sarva Pado Pagachantu Santa Vattanta Sukhanivaha Ityukva Cha Tada Devi Tatraivanta Dhimayayau. Let all calamities depart, and let there be endless happiness for you. Having said thus, the goddess disappeared there itself.
So she says, she blesses him. Poof, she's gone. Now let's see what happens.
Leela Leela Charaja Cha Jivan Mukta Mahadhiyah Kale Videha Muktatvam Ase Dur Devyanugrahat. Leela, the second Leela and the king, of great intelligence and liberated while living, attained to the state of liberation without the body in due course by the grace of the goddess.
Yes. So they continue their tapas. They continue their viveka and vairagya, the essence of practice. In due course, become liberated. That doesn't mean that Leela, is that my watch? It is. What liberation is when the mind rediscovers, not that I was a limited human being and now I'm gone, but I have always been at Partless Brahman, the ground of being. Somehow I just got confused. We do not become something new. We realize what we've always been. Next verse.
Etatte kathitam Rama Drishyadosha Nivrittaye Dilopakyanam Anadham Anantam Jagatatyaja. This faultless story of Leela has been narrated to you, Rama, for the removal of the blemish of the seen. Abandon the idea of the firmness or permanency of the world.
So this is the practice. So again, Yoga Vasishta as a text deals with three questions. Who am I? What is this world? And how has it come about? Now, let's look at where I situate it in the pedagogical progression of our study. So we usually start our Vedanta study with Tattva Bodh. I don't usually teach that one. I teach an art of meditation class, but traditionally we start with Tattva Bodh, which is basically just a definition of terms, what these various terms mean. Anybody here read Tattva Bodh? Okay, next one in our course of study, Atma Bodha of Shankara. Short text, considered a beginner's text. It can be very profound, which gives us a clear understanding and description of what is the self. Next one I usually take up is Viveka Chudamani, the crest jewel of discrimination. Here Shankara starts at the very beginning, even allowing us to be identified with the physical body. It doesn't sound like Shankara, does it? But he says, the glories of the human birth, how lucky you are to have been born a human, to have be viryam, have the warrior spirit. Is there somebody who's lucky enough to have a human birth and squanders it in stupid living? Many people do. Then he subtly shifts, and we have the qualifications of a fit student. Viveka, discrimination, vairagya, dispassion, shamadhi guna, qualities of shama, etc. Mumukshutva. These are not qualities of the self. These are qualities of the head and heart. So he allows us to be identified with the subtle body. Then we have approach to the teacher, and then the shishya asks the 7 questions. Anybody remember the 7 questions? What is bondage? How has it come about? How does it continue to exist? How can I get out of it completely? What is the not self? Who is the real self? And what is the process of discrimination between the two? So he identifies what our bondage is. Our bondage is nothing more than the deeply rooted conviction that I am the body, the cause of which is my spiritual ignorance. How do I get out of it? The antidote to ignorance is not action, it's knowledge. I'm doing this very briefly. So we're invited to Atma Vichara, investigate the nature of the self to remove my ignorance of it. Then the vast majority of the book is the discrimination between the self and the not self. Over and over and over again. I am not the body. I am not the prana. I am not the feelings. Not the thoughts. I'm not even the vasanas. I'm not the ego sense that lodges in the vijnana maya kosha. And after I've negated all of that, the Shishya says, oh Guruji, after I've negated everything, there's nothing left. What's the self and what's the instrument by which it is known? And the Guru said, clever are you in your capacity to discriminate. Know the self to be that by which everything's known, but itself can never be known as an object. In a subtle intellect, realize your true nature. We get some meditation verses. But what's the nature of the self? The eternal subject. Nirupam, without form. Achalam, that never moves. Swayambhu, self-evident. Ajati, not born. Achintyam, unthinkable. Beautiful, beautiful poetry, these meditation verses. universes. Then without any transition, he changes the subject. Basically, what he says is, actually, we lied. We said there's the self and the not self. There is no not self. What we've been calling the not self is also the self. Very short section. Then he ends the book. So this section where we see the self in and through the phenomenal world is the major subject of Yoga Vasishta. The three questions this text deals with: Koam, who am I? That's thoroughly dealt with. Second question: what is this world? And how has it come about? Why is it important? Some people just get the sense of themselves as the witness. Oh, I've got it now. I'm done. No. Because if you still take the not self as something substantial and real, then these are those people who want to get away from this nasty old world. It's so mean. Leave me alone. I want to meditate. That's not freedom. In Tripura Rahasya, Hemaleka, the enlightened sage, says, how can this be freedom when its gain or loss is accomplished by the opening or the closing of the eyes, the length of a grain of barley? That's not freedom. So our freedom comes from seeing the self in and through the phenomenal world. We approach it from two directions. From one direction, all this is pratibimba. It's just a reflection. Shankara will use words like mithya, illusion, vaikatya, falseness. When we look at it from this viewpoint, sarvam kalvidam brahma. Actually, it is Brahman appearing as name and forms. The universe is, but what it is Brahman. So these stories, their intention is for us to break down this deeply rooted habitual conviction that the world is separate from me and has joy-giving and misery-producing properties. Now, this is subtle stuff. It implies a practice that we call savikalpa samadhi. When you can tune up the mind. Keep it absorbed in your self-nature while you are functioning in the world. Now, in the old-timey days when I was with Swamiji, for those people whose minds were subtle enough to tune up. That's what he called it. We'd be with him if we just be surrendered. You gather people like that close to him. The other people, "Wah, wah, 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 wah." And the teaching was no longer about words. And I love to share this story. None of you, I think, have met her, but I have a dear, dear friend. Her name is Vilasini Balakrishna. She's a Westerner. Her mother discovered Swamiji, and when Vilasini was 18 years old, her mother let her go off to Bombay. It wasn't Mumbai yet in those days, to take the brahmachari training course. She took it from Dayananda, would you believe, before he had left the mission. This was in the early 70s. She's very deep. Swamiji asked her to be his personal secretary. So she flew around the world with Swamiji for several years. And she tells a story. One time they were all in a car. Swamiji used to like to ride shotgun in the front passenger seat. And Vilasini was in the back with some other person. Of course, Vilasini, being around Swamiji, her mind was so tuned up. And the woman in the back said, "How did you find all this? Where are you from? And what have you studied?" And Swamiji turns around to her and says, "Will you shut up? Can't you see she's in meditation?" So this is our practice. This is the purpose of meditating on the dream-like nature of the world. And as the sensory data comes at us, Shankara says, have a mind like a wicker basket with water pouring through it. When the yogi's mind stands still by what she has heard and by what she hasn't heard, then she's said to be a woman of steady wisdom. Second chapter of Gita. We'll get to those. Why should we be able to not react to the world, to turn the volume level down? Because it's pratibimba. It's just a light show. So we can begin to have samadhi, this incredible quiescence of mind, while we are functioning.
It is pratibimb of what?
Pratibimba means reflection.
It is
in a
reflection
mirror.
of what? The word is reflection of what?
It appears in the self the same way an image appears in a mirror. It's not a reflection. That the metaphor breaks down because in the mirror there's an external image that creates it.
Yes.
There is no external image to create the world. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes. All of these metaphors, these images, all fall short. You have to, just like the waves in the ocean, that's the one that's very popular. But the self doesn't move, it doesn't really wave. You've been here when I brought out the crystal ball. Like the images in the crystal ball are nothing but the crystal stone appearing as the images. Same idea. This becomes easy to understand if you go to the dream state. You are the God of your dream. In the dream, you have a dream body. From that dream body, you have a locus of perception that you peep out at the dream world. You have a dream ego identified with that dream body. And you have a world of name and form outside and a world of thoughts and feelings inside. You have memories, you have feelings, you have thoughts. But the whole thing is nothing but your mind appearing as that. There's no otherness. Okay, so this is the purpose of these stories, to break down our firmly held belief in the concrete nature of the world. All right, going on.
इति श्री वशिष्ठ संग्रह लीलोपाख्यानामं चतुर्थ सर्गः. Thus ends the fourth chapter titled The Story of Leela and the Abridgment of Yoga Vasishta.
Oh, I think next one should be Karkati, Suchi. Yes, my favorite story.
Panchamaha Sargaha Suchyopakhyanam. Chapter 5, the story of Suchi. Suchi Tapaha, the austerity of Suchi.
Now, Suchi means a needle. That's what it means. All right, going on.
Vasishta Uvacha Asada Bhasamachatma Brahmasti Paramam Padam Brahmana Puradam Kinchit Tam Jivam Vidhi Raghava. Vasishta said, there is a supreme state called Brahman, which is of the nature of a pure crystal having the semblance of the non-existent visible universe. Raghava, Rama, know that to be the jiva or the individual soul, which is the shining or manifestation of Brahman a little.
Yes. So do I need to get the crystal ball out? I think all of you have seen it. So this is the metaphor that Yoga Vasishta is using. So it's stone. It's one homogeneous mass of stone. If I hold it up in the light, you will see an upside down gem reflected in it. That's what the jiva is. The stone stands for Brahman. The image in the stone is the world, but it's also your ego sense. One of the words for the ego is chit chaya. Chaya in Hindi means shadow, right?
Yes.
In Sanskrit, it means shadow and reflection. It means both. So it's the reflection of consciousness caught in the web of thought. It is a shadow self. It's not real. Seen, but not real. Going on.
Tadeva Ghana Sanvitya Yatya Hantam anukramat sankalponam ukhatam yat Sattvam hankaro bhavatyapi. It is only that jiva which in due order is reduced to the state of ego by gross perception. Happening to be intent on thought or willing, it indeed becomes the ego.
Yes. So this ahankara is a function in the Vijnanamaya kosha, the subtlest part of the intellect. In and of itself, it's not problematic. What it does is it coordinates perception and everything. So you're able to get the sense that the person who had breakfast this morning is the same person who's here now. That ahankriti can actually be broken. We call those people schizophrenics. Most of us have an internal dialogue. You know, you're thinking, oh my gosh, when am I going to pay this and such? And oh, I have to go shop for this for dinner. You ever had that voice going on in your head? We all do. Schizophrenics comes from the outside. I'm God, go kill someone, you know. It's an illness. Or we have people with multiple personalities. Spoken. Thing to know is it's not you. But when the mind is in ignorance, what happens in that Vijnanamaya kosha is that it attributes to the self the qualities of the not self. This is called adhyasa, superimposition. I think I'm my body. I think I'm my personality. There's a particular sect of Zen Buddhism where the monks refer to themselves, they say, this one is going to the store, rather than saying, I'm going to the store. Refer to the body as this one, to help them not identify with the equipment. But through long sankalpa, this attains to the state of a solid sense of ego. Now, I don't like to use the word jivatman or jiva. You know, the idea of these transmigrating soul, the individual soul. I prefer to use the language that Gaudapada uses in his Mandukya Karika. He says, Jiva Bhavana, the feeling that I'm a person. That's all it is. Just like I have the feeling, the experience that I'm dreaming this, that, and the other thing. It's not a real entity. I wake up, poof, it's gone. So also with the ego sense. All right, going on.
Tadeva ghana sanvitya yatyahantam. Oh wait, I did this one. Sorry. Chittam cheto mano maya prakritischeti nama bhak dirgha swapna sthitim yata sansara rakhya manovashat. Thought, objective consciousness, mind, illusion, and nature. These are the names it takes on. Under the influence of the mind, it has attained to the condition of a long dream called worldly existence or succession of births and deaths.
Yes. So it goes by many names, this stuff of the mind, which because of sankalpa, we talked about the law of sankalpa, wish, will, intention, thought. Any sankalpa consistently maintained that's not contradicted or conflicted tends towards manifestation, tends towards grossification. It is only through that deep habituated thinking and believing that I'm convinced I am the body. And as soon as I'm convinced I am the body, I think you are your body. Then it's problematic. It becomes problematic. There is no other bondage than the deeply rooted, habituated conviction. There is no other liberation than the deeply rooted conviction based in direct experience. Not that I'm a Mahatma, but that I am. Going on.
Asamya darshanat sthanau iva puspraptayo dridaha chitatma jivayor bhedo naivaivam jiva chittayoh. Just as there is the firm conviction that a pillar is a man due to the wrong understanding, so there is not at all any difference between the conscious self and the individual soul. Thus also between the individual soul and the mind, that is, the former is mistaken for the latter.
Yes. So the story of the Purusha Sthanam, the person in the post, the ghost in the post. You're walking down the street late at night and you see a terrible ghost. You're frightened. A car comes by and you see, oh, it's a lamppost. There's no ghost there. There's no person there. So also, this thing called mind. Oh, my terrible mind, my terrible mind. This thing called the ego, the soul. It's a superimposition of consciousness. Chandogya thunders, sarvam kalvidam brahma. All this is verily Brahma. But because of spiritual ignorance, I don't see it. Going on.
Sachitta sargayo vapi kopi bheda kathanchana atraivo daharanti mam itihasam puratanam. Nor is there any difference whatsoever between the mind and the world or creation on any account. That is, according to the earlier analogy. In this connection, they or the wise narrate this ancient legend.
So the mind is the world and the world is the mind. Ramana Maharshi used to use the example of an old-timey movie projector. The self consciousness is like the lamp. Your mind is like the reel of film. Your deeply rooted belief systems, your sanskaras, your vasanas, are the images on the film. The image on the screen is my experience of the world. If I scrape all the images off the film, what's on the screen? World is the mind is the same. And after a while, you're going to begin to see it's not my mind. You can't find anything called my mind. There's just mind. I have no thoughts or feelings of my own. It belongs to me. Now we're going to hear this very famous story going on.
Yama bhavat pashve karkati nama rakshasi tasya vipulakayatvat durlabhavat nijandhasaha na kadachan satriptim upayata mahodari. There was a demoness by the name Karkati in the vicinity of the Himalaya mountain. Because of her large body and the scarcity of her food, the big-bellied one never attained satisfaction even once.
So she's a Rakshasi. And what is the food for Rakshasas? Human flesh. She's a flying purple people eater. And she's big belly. She just can't find enough people to fill her up. Now, all the beneficent celestial beings, the yakshas, and the demons, the asuras, and the rakshasas, they're all parts of our human nature. They're dimensions of mind. Usually, the asuras are angry. The rakshasas are greedy. I want more. So Karkati I relate. That's all I'll say. You can relate if you wish. But there's just never enough. I was talking with a young man today, and he's quite successful for someone who's only 31. But he's worried about money. He owns a house. He's afraid he's going to lose his house. And his mind is telling him the solution is make more money. Successful. But no amount of zeros will free us from fear. Krishna in the Gita says, no one is more fearful than a wealthy person. So some of us approach the world. I'm restless, I'm unhappy, I'm discontent. I just need another pair of shoes. I guess ladies like to get lots of shoes. I'm amazed when I hear about women with like 20, 30, 40 pairs of shoes. I won't ask. Anybody here have lots of shoes? How many suits do you own? How much jewelry do you have? I have a car, it's a perfectly good car, but I want another car, a faster car, fancier car, bigger house, better title at my job. My value is higher if I'm vice president. More. Dissatisfaction. And when we get thwarted, then we get angry. So if we are operating from that standpoint, be a Rakshasa on that day. So Karkati may not be like you. She's like me, or I am like her. More. And when we're in that state, that addictive relationship with the world, there's just never enough. So that's the state she's in. There's just never enough human flesh to eat. She's so fat, she's not very fast. No, the hunters can outrun her. So going on with the story.
Jambudvipa Katan Salvan Nikiramiti Nishchata Vyavasthita Tapa Kartum Tam Pitamaha Ayayao Raksha Uvacha Bhagavan Bhuta Bhavyesha Syaham Jiva Suchika. So having decided, the Devana said, having decided, I shall swallow all the people situated in the continent of Jambu. She settled in performing austerity. The grandsire Brahma, the creator, came to her. The Devana said, Lord, controller of the existing and those to be, let me become the piercer needle of the living.
So she does tapas. Even demons can do tapas. She propitiates Brahma, the creator, and says, let me be subtle. Let me be the piercer, Suchi. And the tradition says, oh, she became the disease cholera. Well, she's this subtle form, needle piercer. She can eat a whole lot more people. How many people die of cholera? It's far more effective than trying to chase people through the forest when you're a fat demon. So, mind you, this was written at a time before modern medicine. Cholera epidemics would sweep through parts of the world, certainly in India, wipe out thousands and thousands and thousands. And she does this for thousands of years. Going on.
Pitamaha Vacha Evam Astu Tata Him Tvam Avishyasi Vishuchika Darbhojana Durarambha Murkha Dusthitayaschaye Durtesha Vasino Dushta Tesham Vyadhi Bhavishyasi. So be it. You will likewise become the disease Vishuchika. You will become the ailment of those who eat bad food, engage in evil deeds, are stupid, have a bad living, dwell in a bad place, and are wicked or corrupt.
So the ancients frequently had a thought that disease was not just caused by humors, vapors in the air, but bad conduct, bad ways of living cause people to become sick. And there's some truth to this. There's certainly a relationship between our mind states and our health. But nobody is being punished by catching COVID. Understand? So she becomes the subtle form, Visuchika. Is that what the name of the disease was, I think?
Yeah, there's a note as well.
Oh, go ahead.
Note, Vishuchika is a disease which in modern medical parlance is known as cholera.
Okay, yes. So she becomes a cholera epidemic. Hariyom? Must be across the hall. Going on.
atha sukshma sharira sa prani prane kadhatini babhuva buhur varshani tata sa chintayat swayam. Then, possessing a subtle body, she became the destroyer solely of the vitality or life principle of living beings for many years. Then she reflected herself.
So she keeps consuming people, millions of people, for thousands of years. And guess what? It's not enough. What did that woman, Helmsley, the landlady in New York City, she said you could never be too thin or too rich. More. So after thousands of years, the more you get, the more you want. Let's see what she contemplates. She begins to reflect. Going on.
Suchiyam raktaman sanam kanamatrena puryate kvametani vishalani gantan gani durdhiyaha iti sanchit chintya bhuyopi tapastepe sudaranam. This piercer or needle of blood and flesh is filled up by a mere particle. Where have those large limbs of the evil-minded gone for me? Thus, having thought, she performed again fierce or severe austerity.
So essentially, she's not satisfied and she's thinking, what happened to my old body of the big fat Rakshasi? So now she does tapas again. And again, this tapas to invoke the deva is a literary device. But going on.
Babhuva nirmala sapi tapasa shina kalmasha tasthau sakhila sansare heyatam hridi kurvati. Even she became pure, her sins worn out by tapas or austerity. She remained thinking in her heart that the entire worldly existence was fit to be abandoned.
So she, even though she's a demon, even though she's committed enormous sins, not only is she not a vegetarian, she eats people, but she does tapas here, not to propitiate the god, but to thin out her mind. And as her mind becomes purer and she gains more insight, more viveka, her vairagya starts to mature. This life of having an addictive relationship with the world is futile. It's boring. It's repetitive. And she begins to develop a detachment for the world. So, what does this mean? For many of us, when we're young, we're party animals. And then at some point, frequently in midlife, we gave up being a party animal to become a career-driven person. We go through these various stages, and it isn't working. They all told us this is what was going to make us happy. It didn't work. So we reach the state of what's it all about? Is there a real meaning and purpose for life? And she takes up doing spiritual practices, tapas, and develops mature dispassion, vairagya. Going on.
तां वेधा तादृशीं ज्ञात्वा समुपेत्य वचो ब्रवीत् जीवन्मुक्तासि हे वत्से आर्दं ते गलितं तमः. Brahma, the creator, having known her to be such and going to her, spoke these words. Dear child, you are liberated while living. The darkness in your heart has vanished.
So her vasanas have been burned out. So Brahma says, "Ah, you are now free. You are liberated while living. Jivan Mukta." So she gets enlightened. Now, there's great import in this story. Many of us, not so much Westerners, but certainly Indians, think self-realization, oh, only great saints can have this. Only people who are born to Brahmin caste are eligible to do that. I'm just a worm. Or even if I have been born a Brahmin, no, I can't reach that. So this story is to bring home the idea. Some of us may have sanskaras from childhood, which give us a leg up. But in the end, this knowledge is available to anyone who chooses to renounce the world. I don't care how noble your family is, that you can trace your lineage back to the first primordial subatomic globule. If you don't have mature dispassion, what's going to happen? So Karkati becomes real. Going on.
Puratan vapu prapya sukhini bhavunechara evam ukta chiran tasthau nirvikalpa samadhina. Obtaining your earlier body, go about in this world happily. Having been told thus, she remained for a long time in nirvikalpa samadhi, yogic state of absolute consciousness without the distinction of the knower, the knower, the known, and the knowing.
So when all the vasanas have burnt up, the mind stops, enters into the state of no mind, nirvikalpa samadhi. Now, many of our scriptures will say practice nirvikalpa. You can't. It's like saying I'm going to practice sleeping. You can practice getting sleepy. Drink your chamomile tea, take a warm bath, crawl into bed, lift your pillow. If you're successful at being sleepy, the mind will slip into sleep. It's the same with nirvikalpa samadhi. We practice savikalpa samadhi to tune up the mind. Maintain this intense introversion as much as you can throughout the day. And let go, let go, let go. We let go of attachment and identification. And when we have renounced everything. Ultimately, the shortcut renounce the mind. Then the mind stops. We enter into nirvana. Going on.
Suchikrita Prashna, the question posed by Suchi. Atha kalena mahata chitta sampadana nityasa bahir mayi bhutva samsara janapun shudham. Then, after a long time, she, having gone back to the state of movement of the mind and becoming possessed of outgoing thoughts, remembered her hunger again.
So she does not leave her Swadharma. She doesn't come out of samadhi and decide to become a vegetarian monk. Her Swadharma, she's a demon. The equipment does not change its nature. She's still a demon. And she's hungry. What is she hungry for? Human flesh. Bit of a problem if you realize and you want to live a life with himself. How is she going to resolve this? Let's see.
Praptam gyatyo chitaharam atavyam nyavasattada. She then lived in the forest to obtain the food suitable to her tribe.
So she goes back to the forest and she waits for humans to eat. Going on.
Etasmin antare tatra mantrinam saha pupitam rajanyam sampravishtam sa vilokya chintayat bhrisham. During this period, seeing the king with his minister who had entered there during the night, she thought intensely as follows.
Let's see what she thinks. This king and his retinue come into the forest. Going on.
Api nyakshami dehena naiva bhokshye gunamintam tasma dimau pariksheham kyachit prashana leelaya iti nishchitya sadghoram vinagdhyo vacha rakshasi. I shall rather perish with the body, but I shall not eat this king endowed with merit. Therefore, I shall examine these two by some semblance of interrogation. Thus, having decided, that demoness, roaring fiercely, said as follows.
So basically what she decides is, if they're good people, if they're bright, if they're virtuous, I won't eat them. But if they're stupid, if they have poor character, they are lunch. She roars and begins to ask them questions. So the questions she asks we'll take up next week. Stay tuned. What will happen to the king in his reign? Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. What verse are we on for next week?
Verse 20.
Verse 20. Suchi. There is a temple to Karkati up in the Himalayas, supposedly in the area where this story took place. I'm not quite sure exactly where it is, but I've been told that there is one. And she's worshipped as a goddess. You're enjoying the story?
Yes.